How are our lost loved ones involved in our lives? Where do we go when we die? And what happens to our pets once they pass? Tune into the Dead Life podcast to have questions like these answered and call in with your own questions. The Dead Life takes a look into all things paranormal. I'm Allison Dubois. I inspired the hit television show Medium. I'm a New York Times bestselling author who's written 6 books on life after death, and I spent 20 years collaborating with the police on cold cases. I've talked to the dead my whole life. I'm an expert on what they see, hear, feel, where they go, and who they're with. Tune in every Tuesday for a fresh episode of The Dead Life. It will change how you live your life.
Chicago, March 2nd, 1976. A savage double murder rocks the city. 2 young lives snuffed out in their prime. And the killer? A privileged rich kid caught within 4 days, only to walk free through a web of influence and power. For 4 years, the case gathered dust, the truth buried under the web of money, drugs, and corruption, until an unlikely hero emerged. Former rock musician turned star prosecutor who refused to let the justice slip away. Together with his determined partner, they dared to resurrect the case that Chicago forgot. Now, for the first time, step inside the investigation that brought a killer to trial. Convergence, the explosive new true crime book by Jonathan Dixon and Greg Owen from 26th Street Books. Convergence takes you deep inside one of Chicago's most shocking cases. Follow the evidence, witness the trial, see justice unfold. Convergence, available now on Amazon and wherever books are sold.
Before we get into episode 22, this is another episode which is available in full video on our YouTube channel by going to youtube.com/The Rachel Cancer Scam. I've spent a lot of time talking about the legal issues that are happening surrounding Mark and Rachel. I haven't even gotten into the divorce drama or the lawsuits that Mark has filed against Rachel for her various behaviors. Now, as we get into this episode, I want to explain a few things to you. There are 3 important things you're going to need to remember. The first one is an easy one, and that's the name Dan Dow. Dan is the district attorney for San Luis Obispo County. Prior to this podcast, I followed Dan on social media. I'm a fan. I think he's a law and order guy. I think he's done a good job, especially in how they handled the Kristen Smart case. That case, like many, a tragic true crime story. Kristen was a student at Cal Poly in SLO. Her life cut short by a monster named Paul Flores. He was arrested. He was jailed. He was ultimately tried and convicted. And he is where he belongs, in prison. And Dan Dow handled that case beautifully. There's a phenomenal podcast that was also put together by a guy named Chris Lambert about that case. It's called Your Own Backyard, and you should find it if you haven't already. Now, the second thing to remember is the name Steve Boyette, Detective Steve Boyette of the Paso Robles Police Department. If you're watching this on YouTube, you're going to see in a few moments what I refer to as irrefutable evidence in this matter involving Mark and Rachel in the Domestic Violence Restraining Order. There's a report from the Pinger Corporation. Pinger owns 2 separate phone apps. One is called Text Free. The other is called Burner. Both allow consumers to send texts from a number that's not registered to them. It's a handy tool if you want to remain anonymous. And the third thing you need to keep in mind is that there are 2 separate cases involving Mark and Rachel. The first of which is the one I'll discuss here today. That is the Domestic Violence Restraining Order, or DVRO. It's the acronym. The other matter involves evidence in a case against Mark, which revolves around material and evidence collected for this DVRO. And that led to charges against Mark and this hearing for the extension of the DVRO, the topic of this episode. Rachel was issued that DVRO on April 15th of 2024, based on evidence she provided to the police regarding Mark's treatment of her and the girls. And much of this evidence, it was fabricated. And on next week's episode, I'll take a deep dive into this for you. I've said on our social media and here on the podcast that Mark, he's not completely clean. He's an ex-felon. He did an armed robbery over 30 years ago. He spent 5 years in prison, but that was over 30 years ago, and he's a different man now. Rachel, she was humiliated when she was exposed. All 4 daughters learned about Russ and the scam she ran on me within the same week, 5 days, actually. The day her scam was exposed to me, I was on a call with all 4 daughters and Mark. The girls, they were stunned. Not only had their mother been living 2 secret lives by cheating, she had done it repeatedly over the course of their marriage. And she created a variety of different careers: helicopter pilot, airline pilot, lawyer, trauma nurse. Rachel, she was busy. There are just no words, as one might say. Rachel was caught with Russ on December 18th of 2023. And on December 20th, her scam with me was exposed. This was not a good week for Rachel. As a matter of fact, this police report from the Atascadero PD from the day she was caught with me, December 20th of 2023, Rachel, as she always did, threatened self-harm. It was Madison that called the police that day when Rachel said she was going to carry out her plan. She reported to the officer that Rachel told Mark, "I'm going to kill myself."
She had pretended to try and kill herself by driving off the 41 in the middle of the night, and my dad and I had gone driving in the rain to go and rescue her because we genuinely thought she was drunk driving on the 41 about to kill herself, the same day that we had found all this stuff out.
Now, under ordinary circumstances, this would be alarming. But this isn't real self-harm. This is Rachel self-harm. In the months following the relationship with me and Russ being exposed, Rachel had been working to try to reconcile and save what remained of that marriage to Mark. I'm going to dig into the text messages that Rachel was alleged to have received from Mark. What you'll hear is difficult to comprehend when you think about the issue at hand here. You're about to hear a clip from a conversation between Rachel and Mark, which was recorded on March 30th, 2024, just 2 weeks before Rachel filed for that restraining order.
Why do they need to know that?
Why wouldn't they? They're going to know anyway.
Why?
Because they're going to. Because
you're going to tell them.
I don't hide the truth from my kids. I'm not going to do it. Okay? Dad, why did you and mom split up? Well, this is what happened, girls. This is what I found out, and this is why we're no longer together.
So just take them, Mark, because they're never going to trust me again.
They would if you came clean and told them the truth. Why wouldn't it matter? See, that's where you're wrong.
Everybody in my life has turned their back on me.
Nobody's turned your back on... Nobody.
Everybody.
Nobody. I haven't.
Yes, you have.
No, I have not turned my back on you. I didn't leave the house and say, hey, fuck you, deal with this shit on your own. I'm the one that's paying for you to go to counseling. I'm doing whatever I can to help you. I'm talking to you every day. But you just keep lying to me, and it wears on you after a while.
Rachel was doing her poor me act. "Oh, Mark, just take the girls. They're better off with you." I'm thinking that when you lie to your entire family about cancer, repeatedly, when you marry 2 people at the same time, when you have issues like that, you've got a credibility problem. When you fake pregnancy, cancer with different men, when you commit identity theft against your own daughter, you end up with a credibility problem. And when you claim that your second daughter was a product of a vicious sexual assault, and you know actually who the father is because you had an affair with him, people start to turn their backs on you. When Rachel realized that Mark had had enough, shortly after that recording was made, on March 30th of 2024, she had to go with Plan B. Rachel heard Mark say to her that he was going to tell the girls. They would then learn the depths of her grifting, her lying, her conning, all of it. She was never going to let that happen. Instead, she filed for the DVRO on April 15th of 2024, the day after she absconded from the marital home with her 3 minor children. Now, this hearing was on Friday, August 29th. This was the hearing for the extension of the restraining order that was issued 1.5 years ago. What Rachel outlines here on page 2, among other things, is that on July 31st, 2024, she received a text message that said, "I've been thinking about my how for a while now. I think I'll make it quick and let you die slow. I think I'll have it done and then strip you naked because I know how much you hate to be naked. This way everyone will see you laying there naked when they find you, quick and painful, so you won't be expecting anything. It's just going to happen when you're not expecting it." She indicated that the message was from an unknown number. She went on to say, "I believe Mark uses a new number with each text message that he sends like this so that it's more difficult to trace the messages back to him. A true and accurate copy of those messages is here for you to see. This is a report created by Detective Steve Boyette of the Paso Robles PD. It's Paso Robles Police Department Supplement Number 9, and it shows that number that texted Rachel, 978-222-5563. It was assigned to Pinger for text-free on July 31st at 6:32 p.m. You can see here on July 31st at 6:34 p.m., just 2 minutes after she had the number assigned to her phone, she received that message. Is she so inept as to create a burner number at 6:32 p.m. and just 2 minutes later send herself a threatening text message from that very same number? The report indicates that Rachel received this message not once, but twice. This next section is the next paragraph. It says that on July 31st, 2024, at 6:51 p.m., just 17 minutes after Rachel's phone received the first text message from that very same number, another message came through. It was nearly identical, and it had some minor changes. Why did Rachel's phone show nearly the identical message twice in 17 minutes? And why was the first one deleted from her phone when police looked at her phone? Boyette indicated the discrepancies. Noticing the differences between the two texts, Boyette says, he again reviewed the report where her phone was only photographed, and that picture and text only showed that she received the second text. This doesn't match with the subpoenaed records from Pinger. He writes, again, this was found to be highly suspicious. This report was signed and stamped on March 20th, 2025, 6 months after Mark was arrested for doing things like sending texts to Rachel that were threatening. This report, which included a host of other information, was forwarded to the SLO DA's office, Dan Dow's office. Now, not only did the DA not investigate the subpoenaed Pinger report, but insult to injury, they didn't take into account the report from the Central Coast Crime Lab, which was submitted to them. That indicated that Mark never had either Pinger app, text-free, or the burner app, nor did his devices ever show any of the life-threatening text messages that Rachel said came from him. This is included in Paso Robles Supplement 5. One other piece of information, which is damning, that came out of this group of supplements, is that Rachel tried at that point in September of 2024 to shut my social media down and my podcast down, which had not yet come out. She told Boyette and others that I was making false accusations on my Instagram page, stating that there are a lot of things on that page that have twisted stuff, like he's telling everyone that I said I was a lawyer. I never, ever pretended to be a lawyer. I never told that to a soul. He's saying that I had cancer. I never had cancer. I never told anyone in my life that I had cancer. A few weeks later, Boyette wrote that he spoke with Rachel's sister, Sherry, who stated that Rachel told her entire family that she attended law school and that she had cancer. These supplements to their report were sent and signed on March 20th, sent to Dan Dow's office. Now, keep in mind the tape I played for you of Mark and Rachel arguing was recorded just 10 days from that period of time, on the 30th of March. On one hand, what's at stake here is very simple. Should Rachel be granted a permanent restraining order, permanent order of protection, that would prevent Mark from ever seeing his 3 minor children again. Now, on to the hearing on August 29th. First to take the stand, Detective Steve Boyette from the Paso Robles Police Department. This is the same Detective Boyette that wrote those reports a year and a half ago. Same guy that arrested Mark back in September of last year. That arrest happened at gunpoint in what's called a felony traffic stop. A lot of police cars and a helicopter. And Mark sent to jail. Mark is still wearing an ankle monitor as a result of this. Unfortunately, we couldn't tape the proceedings on August 29th, and I don't have the ability to show you a tape or let you hear any tape, but I'll give you some of the highlights of his testimony. And then I'll share with you what Rachel said under oath immediately after Boyette testified. Boyette was asked by Mark's attorney to confirm his role and responsibilities in the investigation for the case that led to the arrest of Mark and these charges that went to the SLO DA's office. Boyette indicated that he was responsible for supervising the detectives in this case. He spoke about one of their detectives, Elizabeth Place. She submitted to Boyette the report that was subpoenaed from Pinger. He indicated that he got some of that data and he synthesized it himself. He was asked by Mark's attorney how many texts were reviewed by him personally in connection with this case. He said hundreds. He reviewed several devices and indicated that not all text messages were pertinent to the investigation, but hundreds of messages were reviewed. He was asked by Mark's attorney who first provided the texts. He said those were provided via a police report that was taken at the patrol level. And then when the case came up to the Detective Bureau, Boyette indicated that he reviewed those reports and read some of those text messages at that point in time. He was asked if the messages were shown to him directly or if they were actually screenshots. He indicated they were screenshots, and there were less than 10 of those in the report. He was asked if he saw the original device, and he indicated that he had not, and he was never in possession of the SIM card of Rachel's phone either. Mark's attorney asked Detective Boyette if he conducted a forensic examination to determine the originating IP address for those text messages. He indicated that he did. The report was sent to the Central Coast Crime Lab. They also subpoenaed the Pinger records. He was asked to discuss his findings and the findings in the Pinger report, which point to the messages most likely coming from Rachel and not from Mark. During this time, there were a few objections from Rachel's attorney. The attorney continued to wonder about the validity of this data. Boyette subpoenaed the report from Pinger. Boyette employed the Central Coast Crime Lab, but her lawyer argued that these reports were not certified. What's interesting here is that the police report that Rachel filled out was good enough for Judge Duffy in Paso Robles Family Court to award Rachel the initial extension of the DVRO. That led to Mark's arrest. But the fabricated evidence that Rachel had used, it shouldn't be lost on you that this information was never verified or never certified. The information Rachel submitted, of course.
We're going to take a quick commercial break. I want to encourage you to follow our social media. I'd recommend you follow Instagram. In the show notes, you'll find a link to all of them. There's a lot more information and backup for what I'm discussing. Much of the evidence that I reference in these episodes here, you'll find there. You'll see screenshots, additional commentary in the way of videos. I also want to encourage you to comment and send along a DM if you've got questions. I answer everything that comes my way. Also, please take a moment to rate the podcast here. Leave a review if you're so inclined. Thanks for following. And this episode will continue after this message.
With so many options, why choose Arizona State University?
For me, the only online option was ASU because of the quality. Their faculty was really involved with their students and care about your personal journey. The dedication to my personal development from my professors, that's been extremely valuable to me.
Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Explore more than 350 plus undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
The judge is going to require that a representative from Pinger and one from the crime lab show up to certify their reports. A subpoena has also been requested, and data has been obtained from T-Mobile, Rachel's phone provider. Apple has also been subpoenaed to provide a list of apps that Rachel downloaded. This is where the text-free app will show on her phone. She said under oath in Mark's criminal trial, not the DVRO trial, but the criminal trial, that she never sent herself a threatening text, and she never downloaded the text-free app. Do keep in mind that Boyette only found Rachel's actual email address that was tied to her Apple account after he ran a background check on Rachel. He did his homework because, out of the blue, in the middle of this investigation in September of 2024, Rachel had phone issues. This report you're looking at right now is Paso Robles Police Supplement number 6, this is where additional obstruction and a possible conspiracy to obstruct justice happens. Literally, right in front of our eyes. Boyette says that on September 11th, 2024, Detective Place told him that Rachel believed her cell phone was bugged and agreed to have her phone forensically searched for any spyware or malware. Later on in the day, Rachel told Place that her phone had been mysteriously wiped. Boyette immediately became suspicious, and they called Rachel to meet her at the police department. Detective Place and Boyette met with Rachel after 3:30 that afternoon. They explained that they spoke with the director of the Central Coast Crime Lab and that they would likely be able to restore Rachel's phone through an iCloud backup. Rachel started to back up her phone, first by entering her email and password, but this backup, it failed. And Boyette told her for someone to remotely wipe her iPhone, they would have needed access to her iCloud account. Rachel stated that Mark had access to it at one point, but she since changed the password several times. When Rachel tried to restore the phone, the backup failed. She couldn't log into her iCloud account. When asked for her email address, Rachel deliberately gave them a wrong email address, not an email address connected to the Apple account. Boyette goes on to write in this report, "At this time, I was working on my laptop, trying to access Rachel's account, using the address she provided. When I tried to log in, I was given an error that stated there was no iCloud account associated with that email account. I became more suspicious, and I used TLO to research other email addresses associated with Rachel. I discovered another email address. And without telling Rachel, I attempted a password reset with this email. And I was notified that a password recovery email was sent to that email address. This led me to believe that that was the correct email address that was associated with the iCloud account." Rachel said, "No." Boyette goes on to say, in this snapshot right here, that she indicated that her email address, the one that he had, was one she used many years ago, and that she hadn't used it recently, hadn't used it in a long time, and she couldn't remember her password. He was given a hint, a password hint. That hint was, your password changed 4 months ago. He writes that Rachel could not or would not provide the correct password to log into her accounts, so her phone couldn't be restored. Now, back to Boyette's testimony. He indicated that during the investigation into Mark, that they confiscated all of Mark's devices, phones, laptops, iPads, and Boyette was asked by Mark's attorney if he found any evidence that Mark had installed any of the Pinger-related apps, text-free or burner. If Boyette or anyone at Paso PD found anything in the way of information that Mark had actually sent those threatening text messages to Rachel, and Boyette said no. Mark's attorney asked Boyette if he found it suspicious that Rachel's iCloud account was wiped clean. Boyette, he said yes. Boyette was asked if it would have been possible to wipe someone's iCloud account remotely. Boyette indicated that he didn't believe so. What I can tell you is that this is likely something you already know, but for the purposes of our discussion here, I'll let you know that all of our iPhones and most devices now have what's called two-factor authentication. That means that Rachel would have had to allow Mark access to her account. She would have had to hit OK on her phone when she got the request that you're seeing right here. Now, I know you're paying attention. I know I don't need to say to you that a law enforcement officer that took an oath to protect and serve, a decorated member of the Paso Robles Police Department, just spoke those words in open court under oath. He has no reason to lie. He also spoke those words in front of Rachel, who was not in court but attended via Zoom. Detective Boyette essentially called Rachel a liar. What Boyette shared in court amounts to Rachel lying on multiple police reports. Keep in mind that there were 9 calls to service to the home that Rachel shares with Russ. Now, the fact that Russ made some of those calls on her behalf amounts to what one might call a conspiracy to obstruct justice. That's just my opinion. Rachel took the stand next, I'm not going to pain you with the minor details, but she indicated to the judge that she was asking the court to renew the restraining order because she still doesn't feel like they are safe from Mark. She said, "It's like he's continued to harass us and hasn't shown any sign of changing or moving on." Her lawyer asked if Mark had violated the restraining order since it was issued. She went on to say that there have been text messages and a few other things. Her lawyer handed her a document. Well, she was on Zoom, so her lawyer showed her a document. She asked Rachel to identify it, and Rachel said that was a text message from Mark. "I received it on my phone." She was asked if it was a true and accurate copy of the message, and Rachel said it is. Rachel was asked to read one of those messages. This is where you're going to want to pay attention and use your memory a little bit, just a few minutes back. The message said, "I've been thinking about my how for a while now. I think I'll make it quick and let you die slow. I think I'll have it done and then strip you naked because I know how much you, well, I don't know if you need me to continue to read this to you," but she spoke those words after what Boyette said, after what I just showed you. Rachel was asked when she received that message, and she indicated that it came in on July 31st, 2024. She was asked if she recognized the number, and she said, "I do not, but I believe it's from Mark, based on previous texts that he sent to me prior to the restraining order last year." It's worded very similarly. Rachel was asked how receiving messages like that made her feel. She said it made her worried that he's still following her and he's still interested in what she's doing. "It makes me feel afraid. I think he's still watching me, tracking me, and watching the girls." She was asked by her attorney about the renewal for the restraining order. She was asked how long she wanted the order granted for. Rachel said, "I want it to be permanent. I've shared with you that a permanent restraining order against Mark doesn't just keep Mark from Rachel. It keeps Mark from seeing his girls, from ever seeing his girls. This keeps Rachel's secrets from the girls because he'll never talk to them again." I do want to do one more thing now. I want to share with you that in the case that the DA has against Mark, this is the one where Mark could be sent to prison. A few weeks ago, Rachel attempted to submit evidence to the district attorney to help that case along. She wrote to her victim's advocate. Of course, she has a victim's advocate. She is forever the victim. And in that email, she wrote to her advocate and said, "I was reading some of the allegations from Mark in my DVRO and Newell case. I'm wondering if James, the deputy district attorney, if he'd be interested in speaking with me this week about more evidence I have from that case that support a pattern of Mark's behavior. He's relying heavily on stating that I sent text messages to myself. I have pages and pages and pages of text message, very similar in wording, from his phone in the months before I moved out that I didn't report, but they can be found in police findings, I'm sure. I have malware confirmation that states that my phone was broken into by Apple employees. I just didn't even think about it before." This email is interesting for a few reasons. Why didn't she submit this binder of information a year and a half ago? Would she have really forgotten that? Think for a moment about how easily she calls the police. The ease with which she will dial 911 is ridiculous. She calls 911 like she's calling Papa John's to feed her girls while she's being an absentee mother. She called 911 on me to report that my Instagram account had shared too much information about her in a video that I made over the late spring. That video had to do with evidence that I showed regarding Rachel when she filled out an application for the Templeton School District, one of the finest school districts in the country. Rachel indicated that she lived in a home in Templeton on that application that she never actually lived in. She did one for each daughter. The paperwork was filled out under the penalty of perjury, as it often is. When you're a super felon to be, you care not about the little details. You care about how to further your cause and your lies. That home hadn't ever been sold, not even once. It was still new construction when that paperwork was submitted. She indicated that she had lived there for years. Now, just for the record, so you know that I'm not willfully providing inaccurate information, that home is still occupied by the first buyer months after Rachel filled out that paperwork. She called the police to tell them I gave information on her address at a home she never lived in. So why didn't she give the binder of information to the police in March 2024 when she got the restraining order, or in July? She was obviously keeping a diary of her struggles and the abuse by Mark, or maybe it was all just lies. Maybe it is all just a house of cards. Ask yourself this question. When she called 911 to report that her iCloud account had been wiped, she indicated she lost everything. How did she get this information all of a sudden in August of 2025 if her iCloud account had been wiped in September of 2024? There are so many questions. This case and the entire matter is a gross misuse of the system, and it shows the systematic abuse of the legal system and police resources that Rachel is perpetrating. There's another hearing today to follow up on this matter in the DVRO case, and I'll have more information for you next week, and I will keep you updated.